Hello and welcome to our C-Suite podcast. Today we're going to talk about how fractional C-level partners can help your law firm. I'd like to start off by introducing my panel here today. We've got with us Steph Tsatsos, who is an EOS implementer, Jon Lassiter, who is the president of LMP, and Jon Latz, who is the founder of LegalFenix. I'm Eric Bersano, and I'm the VP of Business Development at Market My Market. So before we jump into our topic today to cover how a law firm or an attorney can use some fractional C-suite help, if everybody could do a brief introduction, and Steph, I'll start with you.
Sure. Thank you, Eric. Great to be here. As you shared, I'm an EOS implementer, and many folks and firms that are maybe listening into this are probably familiar with EOS, but if you're not, it's stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's really a simple, proven way of just really getting more done in your firm and any business that is entrepreneurial-led.
All right, and Ron.
Thanks, Eric. I'm Jon Latz. I'm the founder of LegalFenix. We are a consulting and fractional CMO outfit serving exclusively lawyers and the legal community. I've been in the legal space for about 15 years, so I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
All right, and Jon.
I'm Jon Lassiter. I'm president of Lassiter Management Partners. I serve as a fractional chief operating officer working with equity partners to bring order to the chaos of their back office. Take that day-to-day management of the back office off of their shoulders and give them the information they need to make data-driven decisions.
Great. So the topics that we're going to cover today are 4 blueprints, really, that every law firm is going to need in order to run a successful business. Some of the topics we're going to cover today would be vision and plan, knowing your numbers, operational tools and technology, and then marketing. So I'll refer to Steph here to start us off on vision and plan. And what we're going to try to do in this episode is really walk through kind of the broad strokes of what every law firm needs to do. You may not want to implement all of these. You may get 2 or 3 kind of ideas from each one of these topics, but I'd say the key here is everybody on this podcast has experience working with law firms and helping them to implement and grow. So with that, Steph, if you don't mind sharing some of your experience with setting up a vision and plan for a law firm.
Yeah. So I think just as you shared, I think it's very important as you're building on a firm and growing your firm that you have got all your leaders in lockstep on what the vision and plan is. And a lot of times, partners feel they've got that, but getting it out of the head and getting everybody on the same page, and then really rowing in the same direction. So everything I share today is going to be from the perspective of the tools of EOS, which again are really simple. We're not building out, complex strategic business plans. It's really 8 questions that we work with firms and companies when we're working on the vision and plan. Happy to share those briefly right now. So those 8 questions really is first, we start with core values. So what are the core values of the firm? Really, what do you want to get out of your people? What is your core focus? So what is your sweet spot? What is your 10-year target? And that could be 5 years, 30 years, but many choose 10. It's that long range, really where you're trying to go. And then your marketing strategy. I know other folks will kind of double click on some of the specifics around how they support on marketing strategy, but the work we do is very high level on marketing strategy, but very powerful. And then we really bring it down to the ground to really build out what the 3-year picture is. What does that look like? Your 1-year plan. And then we move entrepreneurs to living in this 90-day world, which is really kind of bringing focus to what are the priorities that we need as a company and as a leadership team to be driving towards to hit that annual plan. And then from there, we build out an issues list. And so it's a really simple 2-page document we call a vision traction organizer that really is pretty powerful. There are lots of ways firms can do this. You don't have to choose EOS tools, but the power really is getting that vision on, out of the head onto some sort of system or paper and then getting everybody on the same page.
Yeah, and John, I think uh, you'll be able to speak to this as well. But I think a lot of attorneys, when they're starting off, let's say they're with a big firm and then they go on their own, it's very intimidating. And the only thing that they're thinking about is how do I pay the light bill? You know, how do I get my overhead covered? I need clients. I need clients. And it may seem intimidating to do what Steph just lined out, but what I see is the opposite is once you write all that down, once you go through that system, you really start to relax a little bit more. I don't know if you can share some of the experience you've had, you know, from the CEO and CFO level of working with lawyers.
Yeah, so EOS is a great system to follow and it keeps you focused. And I've worked with implementers before rolling this out. And I think having a documented approach to get there falls in line with what lawyers are looking for and what they're sort of used to, sort of that organization, and give me a process to follow. And it's not that overwhelming. And integrators do a great job of sort of breaking this down and working through this as part of their process. So working with the equity partners, you get to dive into each of those areas to understand and have them think about what is their vision? How long do they want this entity that they're building to be around? Where are they thinking of as their exit strategy? I work with some that want to build it up and be acquired. I work with some that want to acquire others and continue to grow. Each of those require a different strategy and a different approach. So taking the time to lay that foundation now is going to pay dividends in the future for them.
Yeah, John, you make a good point. The building up and selling a law firm, I think, is a lot more popular nowadays than it was 20 years ago. And some of the decisions that I'm seeing are, what do we name our law firm? You know, because traditionally the law firm is
Correct.
named after the main partner or partners. And Ron, I don't know if you've seen something similar that with the law firms that you've worked with on, you know, how they're growing, or, you know, some of these initial vision plans when you start working with them, you know, from your marketing perspective, you know, what you really go in to work with the law firm on how to set the stage for not just month 1 and 2, but for the 1 year, 5-year plan.
I think Steph and John had two really important points here about getting alignment from goals and objectives across the leadership team. And then John talks about documenting certain information. When you're looking at your marketing strategy or your plan, it's the same thing. You have to make sure that the strategy that you have in place is geared to reach those goals and objectives that you set out over the next 90 days or half or the full year. Getting that down on paper so that you understand, now that you've got maybe your marketing budget allocated, you understand the overall strategy, so that, you know, you are going after the correct audience and ideal clients. Right now, what are the associated tactics that are going to help us get there? You did touch upon like the naming of the firm, the trade names to take advantage of some of the visibility that you can have in the search results is something that a lot of firms have taken advantage over the past half dozen years, and we continue to see that grow significantly.
Yeah, and then I'll kick it back to you again, Ron, for, you know, the KPI conversation, knowing your numbers, and, you know, from, you know, you can't change what you're not measuring. So if you're not measuring, you know, leads, if you're not measuring your profitability, if you're not measuring, you know, all the things that are in your budget, there's really no way to manipulate that and make it better. So, you know, when you talk about knowing the numbers or KPIs, what are some of the ones that you initially focus on, or are there some that you find are more important than others?
It really will vary by practice area, but for the most part, I'm looking at the amount of qualified opportunities that are being generated from our marketing investments, how many new clients and retainers, signups are we generating? Also, to evaluate and hold agency partners and consultants accountable, some firms will take a look at certain economics, like what their average acquisition costs are, so that when they are working with these types of partners, they can set the expectation that this is what we are looking for when we are defining success of a particular engagement. And that way, as we continue to spend more dollars or outlay more investment into specific channels, we can have some sort of benchmark to see how well we are performing. And I know when you talk about profitability and other metrics, John will probably go a little bit deeper into that. but at a baseline, it's getting more detailed information and not just saying we're trying to grow revenue, get more clients, or generate more leads. It's getting granular and having a real specific target so that everyone's rowing in the same direction trying to reach them.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about marketing, your KPIs could be different for the different avenues that you're using or mediums that you're using. Do you have the conversation with your clients about, I know social media is generating clients, but it's a little bit higher than our SEO, and we need to funnel more money into this? Or are you really looking at things holistically where everything works together? Like you've got to have social media, or you've got to have some branding, or you've got to have a newsletter. What type of conversations are you having when you're trying to measure those with the firms?
I mean, this comes back to the alignment that Steph talked about for the goals and the objectives. Like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to build brand and build more brand awareness and visibility in a specific market? Our share of local voice, maybe top of funnel, more social brand awareness campaigns are going to make sense. If we really want to start generating business immediately today, right? Paid search channels are going to satisfy that investment a lot better, because we are literally putting dollars in the hope to generate impressions, clicks, and then eventually contacts out so that we can get the at-bats to close those potential clients. Then there's longer term investments. So more of your SEO, your organic, your local visibility, right? It really all depends upon like, what do we want to accomplish? And then we make a decision as to how we're going to allocate those funds across specific channels.
Yeah, and Jon, from your experience, you've got a financial background, do fractional CEO work. You're looking at the numbers holistically for the entire firm. What do you really like to concentrate on? What if you start working with somebody? Do you have kind of a go-to list of KPIs or ways to measure where the firm's tough spots are? Like, hey, you can make an immediate difference here, and maybe this is something we work for long term.
I do, and I am constantly evolving those based on the types of law firms. I've come across several here recently that do not track their time. They do flat fee billing, they do value billing, and it makes a lot of those KPIs and measurements difficult when you're not tracking your hours. So yeah, I mean, I start out and I create my set of KPIs that I like to measure against, but part of that initial conversation is understanding from those equity partners what is important to them. How detailed do they want to go? And within firms, I'm seeing different equity partners wanting high level to take me down to the weeds and being able to adapt to that. So if I'm in a partner meeting and I'm presenting, I may have a secondary meeting with those 2 or 3 partners that want to get more granular, but my presentation to the group is going to be a much higher level, hitting those metrics that are specific to them. How are we doing on profitability? How are we doing return on investment, depending on, again, type of firm, on prepaid expenses that we are holding onto for these clients until we get to a settlement? We get to recoup them and then recognize them from a financial standpoint. What does that return on investment look like, even to the case type, where, if we're investing in these types of cases, our return on investment is fantastic. These type of cases, we tend to run out longer. The costs are higher, so our return on investment is a lot lower. And again, all of these are really dependent on the type of practice area and the equity partners. I honestly can't say that I use a subset every single time because each firm is a little bit different.
Yeah, and Steph, I know that KPIs are an integral part of EOS. It's just part of the entire plan. Do you have some ways that you like to use those, whether it's with a law firm or another business that you find are more useful?
Yeah, I think, everything that Jon and Ron just shared, the level that we take, we call it a scorecard. And so with EOS, it's really kind of high level. What are the 5 to 15 numbers the firm should be looking at every week to know that we're a healthy company? We are on track to hit our annual plan. And whatever that is, if it's, if the firm's overarching goals are to grow and get acquired, or maybe it's to improve profitability. But these weekly numbers I encourage them to be sort of leading indicators. So these are activities that they know they can drive. And if they're doing these activities, whether that's marketing and around client retention, some operational, some finance numbers, but some high level numbers, the leadership team needs to be tracking weekly. There will be some lagging, some things that have occurred, but whatever the numbers, to the extent that you can kind of predict performance, those are the kind of numbers we like to see. Every firm's scorecard should be different because every firm has got a different vision, and a different, yes, there are some numbers that you could say would cross functional. John, you're nodding your head because there are some that of course are going to make sense for all companies and all firms, but everyone's got a different scorecard. It's really, at the leadership team level, they need to really decide what is health look like for them.
Yeah, not to put you on the spot, Steph, but one of the things that I learned through EOS was that the difference between the leading and lagging indicators, and one of those would be a lagging indicator would be how many clients did you get last month, how many did you sign up, or how many billable hours. But the more important metric, or one that you might try to measure, is the leading indicator, which is, okay, how many potential clients did you talk to, how many meetings did you set up?
How many
And I think that's,
do we have?
yeah, go ahead.
For referrals. Yeah. So all those activities, those beautiful, like the biz dev stuff that your firm is probably doing that you have to do, maybe you don't love to do, but that's the stuff you have to focus on to get clients. And so those are some of, sorry to cut you off, but those are what we call, those are more leading indicators.
Yeah. And I think it's important, as you start to grow, is really put people in positions that they can succeed in. So you might have somebody who loves to go to lunches and loves to entertain, and they're great at bringing in new business. Putting that person in a chair and making them do hourly billable work, not all the time, might not be as good of a use for their time. So they, to throw it back to you one more time, just because I thought another EOS principle, which would be right person, right seat.
Oh, yeah.
That's something that, to tee you up for what people need to focus on.
Yeah, that is a perfect segue into our accountability chart, right? Which is that tool that helps us figure out, what is every structure, every firm's going to have their own unique structure. It's their own simple, at the leadership team level, what's the right structure for this firm? And really it's all about, like you said, you're going to have some folks in your company or your firm that are excellent. They love to be out there networking, bringing in new clients, building the brand externally. You want those people in some of those seats that can help, that they can shine. So it's all, we use this tool that helps at a very, very simple level get clear on what's the right structure, what are the right seats, what are the roles very specifically, and then making sure you're putting the right people.
Yeah. So to shift gears to the next topic, I'll come back to Ron, because we really want to go over operation tools and technology. This is something that is really changing the face of law firms almost overnight. AI tools, even tools like the fractional C-level people we have on this panel here. These aren't things that I saw 10 or 15 years ago. And when we're talking about using these tools, there's a lot that's available to you that can make you more efficient, whether that's hiring a third-party intake service. One of the things I heard the other day was that they think that AI call centers are they're gonna wipe out within the next 5 years, call centers in general, because you're gonna have these bots that know every single thing about your practice, and they're going to be able to service somebody better than even a human would. So Ron, I don't know if there's certain tools that you like to use or new technology that you've seen that can help a law firm grow and be more efficient.
Well, leveraging AI is obviously going to be the hot topic as to how firms can be more productive and efficient with their time. I tend to lean on that for more content ideation, calendaring, coming up with different variations of ad copy, things of that nature. Outside of that, when we kind of bring this from a marketing lens and I'm trying to understand how investments are performing, what's creating demand versus capturing demand. On the front end of most websites, I have my firms have some sort of dynamic call tracking software. This way, we can set up some automations whenever somebody is calling, automatically create a contact record within an intake management software or into a CRM, and then push that information eventually into a matter management or case management software. It does require some oversight from someone like John to make sure that all these pieces are connected and we know exactly what we are tracking. but it does help you get more of a full picture of what's going on throughout the life cycle of a client. So anytime I can take that information in the call tracking system, push it into my CRM, I'm getting other information like source attribution data. And then it makes the intakes job a little bit easier because there's some automations that can get put into place so that they're focused on taking the intake, focusing on the client, and not trying to fill out all of just the administrative info. And then after that, the reporting that comes from that can help us make more data-backed decisions as to where we're going to put our dollars into different channels. Time will only tell to see if the bots take over everything. And there are some solutions out there that will help provide, very valuable service, because you can always have headcount available or the funds available to have your overage, your after hours, or your weekend coverage. So if you really want to squeeze as much out of your investments as possible, leveraging those tools like that so you can be available to take an intake or schedule a call, or at least have somebody available to call you back, does separate some of those firms that are just letting those calls go to voicemail or just unfortunately not responded at all.
Yeah, John, I think the key is that for every piece of a legal practice, there is probably a tool or a company that specializes in that piece. Now, I mentioned intake before. There's practice management software. Ron brought up the point of call tracking, which I always find funny to have these discussions where an attorney is just in love with their phone number, as if we're in 1985, and having a repeatable number is really, everybody's looking at everything on their phone or their desktop. You don't need the 7 of the same numbers in a row for someone to call you. But from your perspective, when we're talking about some of these operations tools and helping to make people more efficient, what do you see that's working?
I'm seeing a lot more law firms separate their firm practice software, so their management software, from their financial software. And it's allowing them to cut their accounting department staff down. I would love to have one of these companies that have written code for a firm management software to reach out to somebody who's an accountant that knows what they're doing to help them build the accounting module to their practice tools. Most of them that I've seen are atrocious, which means your back office team is spending 2 to 3 times the amount of time and energy to bill your clients, to do collections, to make sure your bills are paid. And it seems small, when you talk to equity partners about here's the things that's going on. But when I can show them this tool is faster and you only need 2 people in accounting instead of 4, that starts speaking to them. And it's a process to get through. But those are areas where I think I've seen a lot more creating that separation. To your point earlier about AI, I think it has a place. I think it is a valuable tool, but I do not think it's going to replace the human touch. There is a piece of that we should always look at, that output, and make sure that that has the right syntax. Would we actually say it that way? Would we actually communicate this idea or thought or direction to a potential client coming in that way? And it just needs that human oversight. And that's areas where I'm working with law firms that are very tech heavy and want to use AI, and still making sure you've got that appropriate oversight.
I'm curious, John, from your perspective, what is the most intimidating thing that you have to present to a law firm? And I'm sure it's different for everybody. Like for me, I'm terrible at accounting. If you were to talk to me about accounting, I would lock up. But do you have something when you come up and you're like, I'm going to break this company apart and we're going to put it back together the way it should have been done from the beginning? What do you find are some of the most intimidating things or the most pushback when you're talking with these attorneys?
I don't get a lot of pushback, which is great. And I think that's part of sort of my vetting process to make sure these attorneys value this type of advice that we collectively on this group are offering, because there's some that don't. I think the challenging conversations, and you're having a conversation with an equity partner, and I'm showing the data that they're in a decline, and they have been for a couple of years. And it's like, what's driving that? What's going on there? With the data that I have, I can take 9 times out of 10 what the other equity partners feel like is going on, and I'm the one carrying the burden of that conversation, supported with the data. So it's not a personal attack. What's going on here? What's driving this? What can we do to get this back in the right direction? Those are the ones that take some good research and making sure that what I'm presenting is not a personal attack, but really how can we get to the root of the problem and solve this as a group. We're all in this together, in this partner meeting, trying to drive towards success.
Yeah, and Steph, I'm interested in your perspective on this because you're not just focused on law firms. You work with a lot of different types of businesses. And I think everybody on this podcast will agree that law firms aren't typically at the tip of the spear when it comes to adopting new technologies and practices. So I'm wondering if you're seeing things out in the market that other businesses are doing that might be able to be applied to law firms, whether it's a new type of technology or something that's making your businesses that you're working with more efficient that could be applied in legal.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's a lot of, you touched on it a little bit around AI and its use case in, operational efficiencies or Gen AI in terms of like writing content. I think it's still early. People get excited about this stuff. I don't have a lot of those conversations in my engagement with the OS because oftentimes those are a layer deeper and we just don't get there. Yeah, I mean, people are excited about ways that, technology can drive transformation and help them achieve a lot of their targets and help them, I think it's all about, like, to Jon's point, it's not about replacing humans because I think actually humans are your differentiation. So I think being tech enabled, but human still is going to be important. Yeah, maybe not a great answer to your question, but yeah.
No, I think we're really in this Cambrian era of technology where everything is changing so quickly. I mean, if you talk to people 2 years ago about ChatGPT, it was just kind of like a parlor trick. And now people are implementing it into their business. And I agree, I don't think it's going to replace humans. I think it's a great efficiency add-on for people, whether you're getting content ideas or you're taking a document, dumping it into an AI and saying, what is it? Tell me in 500 words what this means. I think it's helping to make people more efficient. So I think it's one of these times in our life where if you don't try to at least keep up with it as it's growing so fast, you could be left behind. I started working in legal marketing in 2006, and there were less attorneys that had websites that didn't have there were more people who didn't have websites than actually had websites at that time. And now if you don't have a website, people just assume you're retired or, work for the government, if you're a lawyer. So I think we're in this time right now where you need to embrace technology. And I always tell people, if you're going to make a new hire, no matter what you're hiring them for, if it's a paralegal, if it's an office assistant, I would hire somebody who's passionate about technology, somebody who loves to learn about it. They might not run an AI or build a ChatGPT for your law firm, but you want somebody who can keep you up to date with this stuff. And as we shift into this marketing conversation, Jon, I wanted to kind of find from your perspective, because I think, Ron is a marketing expert. That's his wheelhouse. Jon, I don't know if you look at marketing from a different lens as far as how you're vetting things, where people should start, but when you're looking at a law firm, one of the things that you're specialized in is making them more efficient, and then obviously bolting on some type of client accelerator. So what's the lens that you look at marketing through when you're working with a law firm to bring in more clients?
I like to understand what actually moves the needle for that client. Chances are they're doing something from a marketing standpoint. I don't think I have a single client that's not doing something. What metrics do they have? We talked about this in the last segment slightly. What metrics do they have and what data do they have that's showing them which of those tools are the most successful? And from there, really doing an audit on the marketing team group, whether it's internal or external that they're using, and making sure there's alignment there. Too often I've seen where attorneys will hire a marketing group, set something in place a year or two ago, and it just keeps going. They're not revisiting it. They're not looking at the data. They're not saying, hey, we've added these 2 practice areas. Are you talking about these? They're not celebrating wins. Some of the most successful firms that I work with have an in-house, at least one marketing person that pays attention to that. They've got a pulse on the firm, and then they work directly with the outsourced marketing groups to make sure these things are fine-tuned. And those are things that I did a lot of work coming up from, out of college in market or advertising and marketing industries. So I've got that experience. I am not a marketer, but I know when a external team is paying attention, they're pulling the right levers, that we're getting clean data and we're not getting manipulated data that's showing, we're doing great over here when really the leads are coming from a subsidiary of that.
Yeah, I think you made a good point there that I always like, and I'm a little biased here, I always like working with the law firm that has somebody internal that's passionate about the marketing. Now, I'm not such a big fan of, and I'm talking smaller firms, maybe 2 to 4 partners that want to take their marketing in-house. The reason I say that is I think very few people can do that right. There's just too many marketing options for 1 or 2 people to be an expert. I mean, you need a content writer, search engine optimization, social media, there's, paid search. All of these things are highly specialty types of services. And there's nothing more competitive online than legal marketing. I would say, search what are the 100 most expensive PPC terms, and like 75 of them are all legal. But I do think if the attorney who's trying to get billable hours or working on trials is also the conduit for marketing, there's going to be these huge gaps in there. And this is not the age of yellow pages or throw up a billboard. You have to be involved with your marketing now. If you want your law firm to grow, you need to be an integral part of what the messaging is, what's working, what's not working, or you're just going to be paying this monthly bill. And Steph, I don't know as far as the marketing discussions you may have with your clients, if you talk about it in general, or if there's partners that you like to introduce them to, but what is the growth part of EOS that you really like to drill down on?
Yeah. I mean, so I totally agree with you, especially if it's a small firm. I wouldn't stay in-house. I think leverage a team of experts that know, because like you said, especially when it comes to search, law is so competitive and constantly changing too, right? But from like the perspective of EOS, it's all about what we do is we start with, okay, well, what is your core focus? And that's typically a combination of like why you exist and what you do really, really well. So we call that your sweet spot, and we really want the firm to kind of stay in their sweet spot. And so all of your messaging and your sales motion and everything really should be messaged in the sweet spot. And the work we do in the marketing strategy is very, very simple, but again, it's stuff that cannot get missed. And it's all right. Well, what is your target market, right? And you guys are all doing this with your clients, but like, where do they live? How do they behave? What do they care about? How do they behave is one that gets missed a lot of times, and that's really what we want to drill in. What makes you unique? So, what makes the firm special? Why do you win? Why do you win clients over competitors? So, what are those 2 to 3 things that really are your superpower? And then if you've got a proven process, which is really kind of your way of taking care of your clients from the moment they reached out to the moment they're a raving referral for you, to the extent that you can kind of share how you take care of your clients, that goes a long way. And then if there are guarantees, and I think with some verticals of law or some specialty areas, a guarantee is relevant, and in some cases a guarantee might not be. But if you've got some way of kind of alleviating anxiety in working with you, that's important. But yeah, it's very simple marketing strategy, but it's powerful stuff. And so we do that work at the leadership team level. And then I always recommend, the marketing team then really drill in and do some of the strategic work that a lot of the folks that Jon and Ron would do a layer deeper.
Yeah, you brought up a good point that I run into all the time, which is most of the law firms that I talk to don't know where their clients come from. And I mean that in a lot of different senses, but number one would be geographically. For example, if you're a lawyer in Los Angeles and you want to market for any type of case, whether it be family law or personal injury or estate planning, you're talking about a geographic area that's 10 or 12 million people. And I'll say, well, you don't want to cover all that territory. That's too expensive. Where do most of your clients come from? And they're like, I don't know. So just something simple like that, knowing where to target your marketing. Like, for example, if you're targeting personal injury, I wouldn't spend your money in Beverly Hills where everybody is an attorney or knows 10 attorneys. So there's smart ways that you can approach that. And Ron, shifting over to you, I'm having you bat cleanup here because this is your wheelhouse as far as marketing. I'd love to hear kind of your perspective on, when you're speaking to somebody about growing their law firm, you're obviously looking for ways to maximize their budget. And I'm wondering what that philosophy is, how you have that conversation so that you can hit maybe some of the lowest hanging fruit first and maybe planning a strategy over several months to years so that they can grow to where they want to be.
Well, first, to build upon your response there, where the client might want statewide visibility, and then you try to drill down and understand specific cities, counties, DMAs, where the majority of those clients are coming from. That's where the technology can really come into play. Your CRM system, you can run reports on all of your contacts to understand city, state, zip code, where they are coming from, so you could be hyper targeted with those efforts. And I think one of the things that sometimes gets neglected is referral marketing, right? Like, we can spend dollars to create new impressions and generate visibility in different areas and channels like paid search, organic, and local. But a lot of firms are sitting on a gold mine of all that previous client and current client data, where a simple digital newsletter or a print newsletter or some retargeting marketing can help us get back in front of those individuals. Because, marketing 101, it's know, like, and trust. So you want to maintain top of mind and remind those individuals you were there, you helped them. If you also have more of a general practice type of approach, there's upsell, and expansion opportunities, right? Like, you have a personal injury firm that might also do real estate or maybe some estate planning, right? There's areas of opportunity that you can capitalize on and let them know that you can serve them in so many different ways. So if we're looking to really accelerate or grow in some way, shape, or form, I think that you should at least start by thinking about, like, well, how can we squeeze as much juice as possible out of what we're currently working with? Then there's other ways that we can throw fuel on that fire to accelerate it and be more aggressive in different channels, or try different types of ad units, or, build a personal brand on social. Like, there's so many other avenues that you can kind of consider, but the one that gets neglected the most is one of the most valuable things that they have right at their fingertips.
Yeah, it's such an important point, because if you ask any attorney, no matter what practice area, where do your best cases come from? They always say referrals. Oh, I have people who refer, it's my past clients. And then to state that and then not tend to that, to not foster, those relationships with people you did a good job for that already know you, you're right, they're missing a huge opportunity. I mean, there's a certain amount of cases in every practice area that are up for grabs, each month. The vast majority of them are going to get referred to somehow, some way. My neighbor's an attorney, I'm going to ask them, who should I go to, or a friend. So I do think marketing is really good to grow that part of, outside of your referral network. But if you're neglecting that, I'm curious to know, like, the newsletter, is that something where, you want them to push it out once a month? Is it something that's just informative, or does it drill down a little bit deeper into, the content that you're sending out to that network?
This is a situation where it's do as I say, not as I do, because I'm not terribly diligent enough to keep up with my newsletter frequency. It's paltry.
No, I'm talking about when you work with the law firm, though.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like, I will recommend and tell them. I think
yeah.
On a weekly basis, it is good for certain firms, right? And that depends upon the format and what type of content you are sharing. I think at minimum monthly is solid to give them some case updates as well, to, like, your referral partners also, not just your clients, so that they know that they're still doing good work out there, that if they do have a case that they don't necessarily want to handle or can't handle, they remember you again. So, as much as time will allow, I do think as long as you are sending them good information, not just spamming the inbox with things that are unhelpful, but highlighting, like, your involvement in the community, additional practice areas, like updates in the law and legislation, depending, like, if you're a business attorney, like, these are things that you should know and be aware of. I think that's always a good way to stay in front of those clients, so that there are opportunities to get that repeat business more frequently.
Yeah, I agree. I think all you're looking at is maybe 3 or 4 different slots that you fill. One might be a recent review that we got. Again, like you said, was there a change in the law, whether you're in personal injury or estate planning, giving them information, 99% informative. It should not be, hey, remember me? I do personal injury, send me a case. You might as well just throw those into the junks file yourself.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I'd love to hear, before we close out here, are there any other tips? I mean, this point of this podcast is that law firms have access to more high-level talent than they've ever had because of these fractional positions that you all fill. Meaning they can take somebody like Ron, Jon, or Steph, who they couldn't afford to hire full-time, but you can get some of their time, some part-time high-level expertise. So I don't know if you all have anything you'd like to close out with, is just kind of a way to set it, is that what sets you apart, how you can add value to a firm in this time. And I'll start, Steph, and we'll go clockwise, at least on my Zoom cameras.
Yeah, what sets me apart? Gosh. Well, I really do focus on what the rocks are. So we set rocks. I set rocks to hit them with my clients. That is my performance background. Okay. My enterprise sales motion background. But I care about doing great work with my clients, and companies that run on EOS, not to pitch EOS, but they really are some of the best run small, medium-sized companies you'll see. And so I really believe in the work I do. There are lots of us out there though that do it. I think there are like 800 implementers. So, no shortage of us. I prefer to stay on the West Coast. But yeah, the other thing I would share is just for any partner or firm that's listening in, go to EOS with a lot of free tools. So if you're not ready for full implementation or to hire an implementer, lots of free tools there. So I'd encourage you to go to EOS Worldwide and just check it out. We've the Vision Traction Organizer I referred to earlier, really powerful tool, free access to that. So yeah. And then selfish plug, find me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share more.
Absolutely. And then Ron, anything you'd like to share, last few words of wisdom?
I think where LegalFenix can provide the most value on the consulting side of the house is if you are a firm that is either considering being more aggressive with your marketing, changing out some of your investments or where those dollars are being put into place, don't understand the vendor landscape, unsure who to go to for what, and just at a high level really want to have someone guide you down that path so that you don't feel like you're getting price gouged or the wool pulled over your eyes. I think that's a short-term engagement where a lot of my clients appreciate the conversations that we have. And then on the fractional side, it's really when you are at a point in which there is just simply too much to manage. You might have some internal marketing managers, coordinators, or directors, and then disparate partners basically managing different channel investments. And you want to ensure that the left hand knows what the right is doing. You have cohesiveness with messaging and positioning, and just really need help driving that overall strategy so that you're all rowing in the same direction. That's where the fractional piece will come into play.
Yeah, and I can speak for Ron. He is agnostic as to who you're working with or want to work with or suggestions. Having someone with a lot of experience can take this really confusing marketing world, because everybody's going to promise you the world, and not everybody can deliver. And then Jon, if you can kind of sum up, I mean, I know you've got multi-talents as far as operational side and the accounting side. If you want to leave the audience with some of the things that you really specialize in and can help with.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Absolutely. So I work with the equity partners so they can focus on what they do best, which is acquiring new clients, serving their existing clients, thinking about long-term strategy for their law firm, and handing that to me to say, go execute. And I work with the team that we've got here on this call and your broader team within your firm to make sure that happen. And then I sit down with you on a regular cadence and give you updates. And if things aren't running the way that you want, we want to make changes. We make those on the fly and bring that back to the next meeting and say, here's the progress we've made. It allows you to elevate yourself from that and those challenging conversations. I'm the one that has the data to follow those up. I do not make them personal, and we talk through them to try to get the person back to whatever level of service provider that they were. And we can come to the right terms with that. So I'm here to help and partner with you.
Well, thanks. We'll have links to everybody's bios in the show notes. So thanks everybody for listening. If you've got questions for anybody on this panel, please put those in. Or if you've got a topic that you'd like us to address in the future, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.